One thing I feel about family businesses and passing it on to generations is something that I have not learnt in theory or something, but I have learnt as a life lesson from my father. When I finished my college graduation and stepped into business, I didn't want to immediately step into my father's business. I was like, I want to try something new. That enthusiasm of doing something new was always there. So I wanted to do something that was related to our line. Like I wanted to get into food service. I wanted to do a salad bar and a juice bar, and I was very interested in food then. But one thing my father clearly told at that point of time is like, he said, I'll fund you for your new startup, but you have to ensure you do everything on your own. So, and he stuck on to his words. He never stepped into my business anytime. And it was a lot of learning. I struggled, I made mistakes, then I rectified them and I came up with it. I felt that I could have saved some money if father had stepped in, but later I realized that father did it on a purpose to let me learn. So I think as generations move forward, that's a very, very important lesson, to let the next generation do their share of mistakes, learn from it and move on, and also to ensure that the next generation knows the crux of the company's core values. So for us, the core value is to be fair to people. That also has formed as a culture. So that's something that father did very, very nicely to us, and our cousins, and our father and their brothers did that to the cousins. So that way I feel that it's very important to transcend that to the next generations.
Awesome. Talking about core values, the other part of any business is the core purpose. And every time we find examples in the media, in our own ecosystems of companies, when they reach a certain size, the temptation to do everything on your own, to do everything in-house for the purpose of maybe control or so-called control. But also it is very clear that focus gets distracted or diverted. How do you draw the balance between what you should do in-house, what you should actually partner or outsource?
Very important question. In fact, logistics, like I said earlier, is a very key important aspect of our business, but we never try to get into logistics because that's not our core business. And one thing I've always realized is when you try to do everything, you're actually running in a race in a zigzag manner. You're not running straight towards your target. So that way, that I felt that when you concentrate on your core business, that is for us is retailing and expanding to be available to more people. So I have more number of outlets and I increase the product range. I think that's our core business, not to get into logistics, not to go into agriculture, because there are people who are doing it better. But having said that, there are times when we need to do something like importing, for example. Earlier we never used to import, but now it has become a strategic importance. Like in India, there are importers who are wholesalers who bring in only the fruits that they can primarily sell widespread. They don't bring in niche things, like if you take berries for example, or cherries for example, or avocado, stone fruits. These are things which there are a lot of expats who are coming into India who have had a taste of it and they want to try these things, and they don't have a source to try these things. And Pazhamudir wants to be the outlet or the retail company where people can do this, people can get these kind of products, and that's what differentiates us. When you walk into Pazhamudir and walk into any other store, you find at least 20 to 30 new products that are not found in other places. So that way I feel concentrating on your core business is extremely important.
So basically when you say these unique berries, cherries that you brought in, it's the core focus on your customer. Yes. And in this case your customers are also the younger generation, the expats who want to try healthier fruits. So basically core purpose is driven also by a core customer. Is that an understanding?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So I think expansion from starting off in Pazhamudir, Coimbatore, and then now you're all over the state and looking at other states. There's always risks involved in a perishable business. There's risks involved in franchisees, risks involved in employees hiring going wrong. What is the framework used to mitigate risk or look at risk?
There are a couple of risks that I would say, there are different levels of risks that in the business. Right. One level of risk is something that where you are 70% already mitigated the risk. For example, now we are opening a new store in a certain location. So now we have a lot of analysis by which we know in this area what's the number of houses there are there. So whether this will do well, not well, how actually other retail businesses in that area is doing, and these are things we can understand and then go to a certain area and open a shop. And having said that, no matter what kind of research you do, opening a new outlet is still a risk. You will have to wait for day 1 and day 2 to understand how people react to it, and that way that's a risk where you're already mitigated 50% or 70% of your risk and still go ahead with it.
Right.
But then there are risks where you're taking these risks for strategy. You're bringing in a air container of cherries. India is a country which is absolutely new to cherries. I would say 1% or 2% of the people buy cherries. Wow. So we have 50,000 walk-ins every day. So take 1% of us at 500 people. So if 500 people buy cherries, whether we'll be able to finish a container of cherries, it's a big challenge. So now the risk is like how to ensure that 10% of people buy the cherries. So that's a risk where you take, and then you also market and then trust in people. So most of the time I feel that when you have trust that you will overcome the risk, you mostly overcome it. And these times teach us also not always all risks go well. So it always teaches us what went well and try to build more on that.
Great takeaways. One, operational risk by research and market fit, strategic risk but for the purpose of growth.
Absolutely.
And the last one, even if it goes wrong, there's something to learn. So I think that's great way to look at risk as a framework. You talking about EO, shifting away from the business. I think you've been in EO for 2 years, one of our most engaged members. How has EO experience and learning impacted your entrepreneurial journey? Could you share some example?
Yeah, the reason I joined EO was because it was not unlike any other organization. It was more like a inward looking organization where you build yourself as an entrepreneur. I felt that my thirst for learning was always there, and I was not getting right channels where I can build on my thirst for learning. And when I joined EO, that's something where I felt that I have ample opportunity to learn and improve myself. So that is very, very important in making of an entrepreneur, that you learn as you go. And one thing that I also felt is things like forum experience in EO, which is very, very unique, which other organizations don't provide. You go as a forum, but with a set rules and agenda, where there is a certain way you hold meetings. There used to be a time when I have franchisee meetings and manager meetings where I used to be the only one who prepared for the meetings. People used to come and just listen to me in the meetings. Now I give opportunities for everybody to come prepared for the meeting, and there's a lot of listening that is happening now. I used to be a good listener but not a great listener. I used to miss out a lot of stuff. But now there's a way of picking up things, listening better, listening deeper, that has happened after I joined EO. So I felt also there's a lot more areas where I improved myself as an entrepreneur after I joined EO.
Great. Now EO has a lot of products, tools, platforms that it offers to members like yourself and myself. Are there any couple of top of the line tools that or learning events that really impacted you? Anything that you would like to share?
Couple of things. One thing on a very casual note is like there was a session called $1 Million Handshake.
Right.
Yeah, that was a session where he said how to shake hands with great effect. I always used to have a shy handshake, not a very bold or connecting handshake. And I used to go to a lot of trade conferences. Even now I attend a lot of trade fairs, which is very important for our business because the world is open now. And the very first thing that people notice is how you shake hands. And after I had this session, when I'm shaking hands, I feel that is having an effect on people. When you shake hands right, it has an effect. Very, very simple things, but it has had an impact in the business. Wonderful. The one other thing that I really felt made a big change in business was attending this session called Profit First, wherein they very clearly the session taught me that you should treat profit as a fixed cost in the business, like how you treat rent, how you treat salaries, also treat profit as a fixed cost. and ensure you bucket these expenses in different accounts so that you're not running short on any of these things. Usually what entrepreneurs do is, as soon as their expenses are met, everything else is met, profit is something, whatever is left is profit. Now the attitude towards that has changed. I know that this is a fixed amount that profit should be there in certain business, and that session changed me for the better.
Awesome, great. So maybe moving away from EO and work into something on a lighter note, I think all entrepreneurs, leaders struggle with work-life balance. Either there's too much stress, there's too much happening at work, there's no time for family. How do you as a leader manage work-life balance? Any tips on that?
Yeah, I'm a avid shuttler, so I like badminton a lot. So I play pretty regularly. So that's something that couple of hours of badminton every day keeps my mind away from the pressures of work and the challenges, and everything is kept away for some time. I felt having a healthier body translates to a better entrepreneur. So that way, one thing again I would do that has made a lot of good is having this clubs in EO, like the My EO club. Every morning I open, there are already n number of people who have started their day with a run or a jog or a cycling, and it prompts you, okay, you have a lazy start to a day, you still feel no, there are people who have already started, I better prepare myself for a good start with a good workout. So that way I always felt, even though I have interest, this My EO thing has also ensured that you're having a good balance of work life.
Great, wonderful. So going back to work, is there a vision that your group Kovai Pazhamudir has for the next 5-6 years? Let's say, if you want to share with us on what is the vision for, say, 2025, what would that be?
Yeah. As a vision, one thing that I would always like to say is, adding number of outlets. Okay. It's something I would say is what happens to business by its own nature. Like, we are 55 stores now. Where do I see 5 years from now? Maybe 100 stores or 150 stores, okay, and presence across more states. But is it the core vision? I would say no. The core vision is, what I can do, when I, transcend after a couple of generations, what we have done with this business to people. Right. So, how it has impacted lives of people. So, India as a country has moved from a country which was scarce in food safety. There was a time when food security was a big issue. Right. Not all people had enough food. Right. So that's when the Green Revolution happened, and there was a lot of plantations and a lot more food came into place. With that also came the risk of food safety, because when you had to secure so much food to people, there were fertilizers, there were pesticides, there was a little bit of abuse also that happened in that. And so the issue of food safety is what is very big now. So a couple of decades later, when I am mature into this business, I'll be extremely happy, like if I'm very, very sure of saying that every single food that is sold in my outlets is very, very safe to the consumer. Right. I think that is something that would be my vision, rather than, adding outlets and things that helps with the business. Of course, when I want to bring in a container of fruits, I have more number of outlets, I have more disposing capacity. Sure. But more than that, my vision would be to, bring in food safety when we move into the next decade.
I think I can see a kind of pattern across different segments of a conversation, and that pattern is core values. It's repeating from what's exciting, organization culture, hiring, and including vision. So it's awesome. It's been a pleasure talking with you, Senthil, and enjoyed our conversation.
It was a great pleasure. Yes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.